Profesor Sugata Mitra, ¿cuál es la principal conclusión a la que usted ha llegado en materia de aprendizaje luego de tantas experiencias científicas en el área?
Well, children today have access to some form of connectivity, whether it's through their mobile phones or through their computers or through whatever. This changes them. So the conclusions I get are that a child who has reading comprehension, can read and understand, has the ability to search for information, knows how to search. And thirdly, very importantly, knows how to believe what he has found. Whether to believe, whether to cross-check, whether to check again or whatever. A child who has these three abilities needs a very completely different kind of education. I might even go so far as to say doesn't need large parts of education as it is traditionally existing today.
Profesor, ¿hay que pensar entonces en una metodología pedagógica diferente para diferentes clases de estudiantes y de alumnos?
Yes, well, different in some ways and perhaps similar in some ways. The ability of the teacher to provide answers to things is not very important anymore, because all the answers are up there. But the questions are not all up there. So it is, I think, the teacher's job, the big difference in the teacher's job is to provide the correct questions. Questions that will drive a child's mind towards a certain area of knowledge. And it cannot be trivial questions. It can't be, how tall is the Eiffel Tower? But it could be, why was the Eiffel Tower built and by whom? Now, that, I think, to today's child would be worth answering, as opposed to saying, how tall is the Eiffel Tower? Well, he thinks, if I really need to know that, it will take me 3 seconds to find out. Why is she asking me this?
Por lo tanto, tenemos que pensar en maestros que sepan preguntar, lo cual no es una ciencia sencilla, y lo digo desde esta profesión, que pensar preguntas interesantes o que hagan pensar no es fácil, y también implica un rol diferente del maestro en el acto de aprendizaje y en la relación, algo así como un cambio de paradigma.
Yes, definitely. The teacher needs to have a different role, well, rather unfortunately, because she did not practice this role earlier. I like your example of the journalist. It's not as though the journalist now has to learn how to ask good questions. Journalists should have always known how to ask good questions. It's just that there was a time when she didn't need to, so she didn't learn it. It's the same with the teacher. So yes, it is a harder job. Sometimes people say that my work seems to show that teachers are not needed. That's not true. Absolutely not true. Teachers are needed more than ever before, but their job is now more difficult. It's more in the mind. It's not the job of taking your 10-year-old notes and reading them out in the class. That doesn't work anymore.
Bueno, uno supone que en el futuro tal vez entonces esa dificultad quede zanjada con una formación de maestros que tenga en cuenta este cambio de paradigma. Estaba pensando, usted dice que hay que preguntarles por qué o para qué se construyó la Torre Eiffel. Usted hoy de mañana en una escuela preguntó a los niños ¿por qué soñamos? Una pregunta que parece abstracta y de respuesta difícil, y sin embargo usted obtuvo respuestas sorprendentes. Hábleme un poquito de esa experiencia.
Absolutely. I was quite taken aback. I do this very often with 9 and 10-year-olds. So I was expecting a certain kind of an answer. What I got was a very pleasant surprise. I don't know if it is because these children are very used to searching for information or what it was. I made them into groups and I asked them the question, why do we dream? There were 4 groups. One half, 2 groups, came up with the psychological theories. They went all the way across from Sigmund Freud to everything. And then they said it comes from thought, it comes from what happened to you yesterday. It's like thinking with your eyes closed. The other half, the other 2 groups, went in a completely different direction. They said, when you sleep, your serotonin levels drop and your acetylcholine levels rise, and this combination of chemicals produces random thoughts which are affected by the events of yesterday, and it produces a dream. This is something you would expect to hear in a postgraduate interdisciplinary class in a university. This is not what you would expect to hear 10-year-olds in a Uruguayan school to say. It was wonderfully done, and the teacher's job, well, I first put the question, why do we dream? And finally I wrapped up, not with my knowledge about dreams, which is 0, but with what I had heard from them, and I said, it looks to me as though there are 2 sides. There's the psychological side, there's the chemical side, and we are only beginning now to see the connections between those 2 sides. Who produced that knowledge? Not I, not the internet. The internet only provided information. It was the children. 20, 9, 10 and 11-year-old minds in 30 minutes.
Usted decía, cambió el paradigma de la educación, el docente tiene otro rol, pero uno también está entonces frente a estudiantes y frente a alumnos con capacidades y cualidades que bien explotadas seguramente van a generar un tipo de estudiante en secundaria totalmente diferente y con una demanda mucho más exigente.
Yes, it's something that I think about often, and like most people, I'm a bit confused about what the adolescent of 10 years from now, what's he or she going to be like? What are their priorities? What's their life view? What do they believe in? How does this immense connectivity affect the way their brains work? Will they want to go to school at all? Or will they see school as a leftover from another age? Just to take some examples from my generation's childhood, it was a very important ability to know arithmetic, to multiply, divide, add, subtract. I think it's a non-issue right now. When you go to a supermarket, are you at all bothered whether the girl behind the counter knows how to add or doesn't know how to add, because you know that her machine will do it perfectly for her. You'll even open the drawer and show her the money. In my generation, it used to be very important to know how to read a clock. Yes. Okay, mothers used to spend days and hours saying this 3 o'clock, 3:15, 3:30. An absolutely unnecessary ability today. It's gone. How many such abilities are lying in the queue, getting dislocated and useless every day? Is anyone keeping account of that? Is anyone changing the curriculum? Because if we don't, the adolescent is going to just look at, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about it? Okay, it frightens me. It frightens me. So maybe we should ask them a little bit more about their world. Instead of trying to say, this is our perfect world and you have to fit into it. Welcome.
¿Los niños aprenden más y mejor trabajando en equipo?
All the evidence that I have found seems to show that they do almost anything better in a group than they do individually. my work, of course, way back from India shows that they are, if left to themselves, they work in groups. They choose to work in groups. Today in Uruguay, I asked, and yesterday I asked 3 different school children, would you like to solve a problem on your own? Would you like to solve it in a group? 99% said we would like to be in a group. I asked them, why do you say so? And they gave some really nice answers. The best one that I remember was a child who said, because 4 brains are better than 1 brain. What can be simpler than that? Another child who said, if I can check what I have found with my friends, then I can be sure that I have got the right answer. That's brilliant. Another child said, I can discuss and make a better answer than just reading from the screen, which was also brilliant. They seem to instinctively understand how to, or they instinctively understand the difference between knowledge and information. If they can understand that at age 10, I feel very optimistic, because then the internet is not this evil repository of useless information. It is knowledge, and the children know how to tap it.
Profesor, uno podía ver a los chicos en las experiencias que usted realizó aquí en Uruguay divirtiéndose, disfrutando. Yo estoy divirtiéndome con esta entrevista que le estoy haciendo a usted. Estoy disfrutando todo lo que usted me transmite, porque lo hace además desde un lugar de alegría y de felicidad por las conclusiones que va obteniendo en relación a los descubrimientos que hace. ¿Es necesario divertirse y disfrutar para aprender? ¿Cómo lograr eso?
Yes, well, our minds are engineered so that we like to do things that we enjoy. I mean, that's really a very stupid thing to say. Everybody knows that we like to do the things that we enjoy. So if whatever it is that we were doing in school was enjoyable, we would like to do more of it. Having said that, there is a little puzzle. There are things that you can do very well, but don't enjoy doing particularly. And there are things that you don't do very well, but you enjoy very much. Now in life, which one should we choose? Should we choose the one that we can do really very well, but it's a bit boring and we don't really like it? Or should I choose the thing that I can't do very well, but I really love trying, I really love doing? I believe that children follow the second one. And I would like to believe that I follow the second one as well. If you can't enjoy it, then you're wasting some really precious time that will never come back again. Children seem to know that, so every minute, every second of their lives, they try their best. We, of course, in our old traditional system often try the opposite of telling them, sit quietly, don't talk, pay attention, etc., wasting the precious moments of childhood. If we can only realize that, and if we can realize that when children are having fun, they are not wasting time. They're doing fantastic things to their brains. If we can understand that, if we can channelize that energy, then I think we have a gentler, better education.
Profesor, hablamos de trabajo en grupos, hablamos de aprender a preguntar, hablamos de aprender a enseñar de otra manera. Esto implicaría también evaluar de otra manera, aprender a evaluar de otra manera, supongo yo. Podemos pensar en evaluaciones genéricas iguales para todo el mundo, y cuando digo todo el mundo estoy hablando de esos planes de evaluación que existen, que evalúan a varios países de la misma manera. Podemos pensar evaluaciones genéricas para un mismo país, o deberíamos estar pensando en evaluaciones diferentes para diferentes tipos de niños en una misma sociedad.
Well, evaluation is a really difficult area to figure out anything in. I spent a part of today talking to the head of research in the government here, who looks after assessment, and he was agreeing with me of how difficult a task that is. Is learning something that you can measure, like you would measure sugar? Is it at all measurable? We think that the ability to answer a question may be a measure. Is that a measure of memory? Is that a measure of learning? Well, these things have been debated for centuries. We had no option because all we had, the only computational device we had was the brain. So we first used it as a storage device. That was in Plato's time. It said, put as much into it as possible, test to see that it's all coming back. Then we said, well, that's not such a good thing to do. Now we can write and we can publish things. So you don't have to memorize everything, but you should know the meaning of what you've done. So now we must test for meaning. Then if we jump a few thousand years ahead, even the meaning is around everywhere. All the facts are up there. You have hard disks, you have key drives, you have this, that. You don't need your brain to store anything. So what's the brain going to do now? Well, it's got to look for the big answers to the big questions. At least that's what I believe. Unfortunately, something in our brains stops us from asking the big questions around the age of 12 or 13. For some reason, we feel a little bit embarrassed. If you as a woman go into a nice party or something, you are unlikely to say, I wonder, why am I here? I wonder, is there a divine purpose to evolution? People would think you are mad. That's not a nice conversation for a party. You should be talking about, there's a nice sale, there's this, there's that. Why? Why does the big question become embarrassing after a certain age? I think that's an issue that's got to do with assessment, because the assessment stops asking questions about the big questions. It asks you little questions. It asks you, how fast will it fall if I throw it up at this speed? And can you calculate that in 13 seconds? Then I'll give you 62 out of 100. Well, as I said, the brain's learning is not sugar or salt that you weigh. So I don't know. I don't know if that assessment works at all. But I know there is one assessment that does work, I think, very well. I could go to your best friend and ask her or ask him, what do you think of her? I think I would get an accurate answer. Similarly, I could go into a class and I could say, okay, who is best in mathematics? I believe the children will give me the exactly correct answer. So, is this kind of peer assessment what we should be looking at? When we are trying to evaluate a school, should we ask the children, how good do you think your school is? Should we ask the parents, out of the 10 schools that are available to you, which one would you send your child to? Should that be the assessment of the school, as opposed to going to the school and trying to measure how many marks, how many children, how many this? It's a big issue. I don't want to say that I know anything about it, or that I should express an opinion about it. All I would say is that the entire issue of assessment needs to be looked at from scratch again.
Nuestro país, al igual que otros, tiene niños, familias y barrios muy diferentes, con diferencias sociales, pese a que este es un país bastante inclusivo. Tenemos diferencias sociales, tenemos niños y familias que son estimulados de manera diferente, que crecen de manera diferente. De acuerdo a su experiencia, ¿deberíamos pensar en currículas diferentes para diferentes escuelas y diferentes niños?
In practice, that's impossible. So we have to agglomerate. And I suppose in a way that's how we form social class, that's how we form nations, by saying this boundary defines a certain kind of people. So they need a certain kind of treatment. The next boundary needs another one. It's not the best solution because, things don't change like where you draw the border. It's not as though you flip a switch on the other side. But that's the best we have at this point in time. So yes, I do think that you would need separate curricula, but broadly separated into perhaps for children who have a disadvantage, for children who have an advantage, and in the middle for children who are okay. Other than that, regionally or geographically, I don't really see much of a need, particularly at the primary level, for having curricula which are significantly different. Yes, you need to adjust the stories and the things to because of weather, because of food, that kind of thing, but nothing very significant. So yes, I would say if we had 3 global curricula, for the disadvantaged, for the advantaged, and for the middle, that should be enough.
¿Cuál es la impresión que se lleva del Plan Ceibal y cuál es la impresión que se lleva también de los niños y las escuelas uruguayas?
Well, that's what I came to find out. Professor Nicolas Negroponte and I know each other for many years and have followed each other's work for many years. So the one laptop per child program has always fascinated me in 2 ways. One is, of course, the wonderful engineering of the machines. It's very rare for someone to have created a computer meant for education and meant for children. Most of the time, we don't realize that we are using borrowed technology. When you take a LCD projector, who is it made for? It's made for corporate boardrooms, not for classrooms. That's why they're so expensive. If you take PowerPoint presentations, who was PowerPoint invented for? Not for teachers, for making boardroom presentations. We borrow that. The Exo laptop is not borrowed. It was designed for the purpose that it's being used for. I love that. But my question was, what does it do? What will it do to children? That is what I came here to find out in Uruguay. Unfortunately or fortunately, I had a high-class problem here. The problem was when you try to see what change it has made, you need some children who don't have it. That's called a control. In Uruguay, there is no control. Plan Ceibal has destroyed the control completely. Every child has one. So I decided to use a somewhat different approach. I decided to see how children would behave with many children to a computer, how children would behave with one computer and one child, how children would behave without a computer. The data is just being collected now, and it will take a little time to analyze it. What's my impression of Plan Ceibal itself? It possibly couldn't have happened anywhere else, because I don't know of any other country which has done it, which has actually given a laptop to every child. And you can't simply say it's because of size, because there are many countries in the world which are much smaller than Uruguay. Yes. So it is something unique to Uruguay. So we can say one thing for sure, Plan Ceibal is unique. Then comes the question, well, unique is fine, what has it done? Well, have I seen a stupid child in Uruguay? No. And you might say, well, how many children have you met? I've met hundreds of them in 2 days. They're very good. They're very rational. They can search very easily because they have computers. They're obviously very used to searching. I can't but say, even without analyzing the data, that whatever it is that Plan Ceibal has done can only be good for the children. I can't think of any reason to say that if all this had not happened, the children would have been better. That seems to me like an absurdity. So